Now, of course, despite all of the griping I just displayed front and center, the game still ended up being a moderate success in terms of critical reception and sales, so it makes sense that Sumo went right back to work on crafting a sequel. The development staff of the game this time included members of Bizarre Creations who developed the Project Gotham Racing series, among other things. I'm personally not really familiar with the series, but hey, at least we're getting people who once again know their stuff, right? Wanted to mention this real quick because I wasn't sure if this was in the first game or the second, but apparently Bayonetta was supposed to be a playable racer, but was allegedly cut due to the devs fearing she would raise the ESRB rating. Which is baloney. She ended up being a DLC fighter and a returning fighter in 2 Smash Brothers games, and she didn't raise the ESRB rating at all, so this excuse is garbage. She was robbed, I tell you, she was robbed! On April 30th, 2012, a reveal trailer dropped showcasing the title of the upcoming sequel to All-Stars Racing and the main new mechanic it showed. Later releasing to the US on December 11th, is what we now know as Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed.
Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed!
Yeah, I just said. This one I also remember playing as a kid. Got the game for my Wii U, and once again I still own a copy of the game. It was one of the many titles I bought for the system near its launch period. There. Maybe one day I'll get to make a video about you. Rest well for now, King. All the footage you'll see, of course, is from the PC version, and this will apply to Team Sonic Racing as well. Feel I should get this out of the way first and foremost. To say that Transformed completely and utterly trounces the first All-Stars Racing game in every single conceivable category would be the biggest understatement of the century. Yeah, this game? This is the real deal for me. This is bar none the best kart racer I think I have ever played. Mario Kart? Nah. Crash Team Racing? Get that out of here. This game is where it's at. Remember a while ago when I said that the last game was a good excuse for Sumo Digital to test the waters and see where they could go from there? Well, I guess they took that advice literally, because... So as the title infers, the main selling point that this game has to offer is the transformation mechanic. During races, your car will transform into one of 2 different other vehicle types, a speedboat or a plane, to adapt to the environment. You transform by simply entering these transforming rings placed throughout the course. Transforming vehicles as a concept for a kart racer has technically been done before in games like Diddy Kong Racing and Mario Kart 7, but I feel Transformed figure out a way to truly make this concept more mechanically engaging in more ways than one. Each transformation has specific quirks you can take advantage of. Cars are obviously the all-around type of vehicle, planes are by far the fastest of the 3 and have access to a technique known as risk boosting, which I'll get to later. The speedboats are usually slower than the other vehicles, but are also more bouncy in how they handle, especially with the waves that constantly show up, allowing you to get major airtime and sneak in stunts to get a ton of speed. Combine this with the fact that the speed cap apparently doesn't apply to the boosts on the water, and you can actually gain some pretty tremendous speed if you time everything perfectly. Despite their differences, each of these different forms still handle relatively similar to the car, so it's at least easier to understand and delve into the transformations when you first pick up the game. The transformation mechanic also allows for some of the best track design I've ever seen in a kart racer. You'll start to see the layout of the tracks change throughout the course of a lap. It's usually never the same experience for each lap, it's incredibly dynamic. For example, for 2 laps you could be driving down long stretches of road and then all of a sudden, boom, the road ends up being destroyed, forcing you to fly above it in plane form. Or you could be driving down a track where the area is constantly flooding, leading to higher water levels each lap, leading to different track design for both car and speedboat. Things constantly remain interesting in Transforming. No track ever gets stale for too long, and it's one of the many things I love about it. And of course, while we're on the topic of track design, sweet mercy, what a complete 180. These are some fantastic racetracks. They basically tick all the boxes of what I'm looking for. Fun, hidden, challenging shortcuts, sharp turns aplenty that combine with the transformation mechanic. In all honesty, I don't think I can find a single track or cup in this entire game that I can find bad or even below average. They're all genuinely fantastic. Maybe I can rag on the Classic Cup for a bit. It's basically a collection of 4 tracks from the original All-Stars Racing, so, you know, they aren't exactly great. But to be fair, they are some of the better tracks All-Stars Racing had, and they're made that much more engaging due to the additional mechanics Transform possesses. Speaking of which, track design isn't the only thing that Transformed improves upon in all fronts from the first game. The general mechanics also got a huge upgrade as well, and this isn't just talking about the transforming vehicles either. To start, the vehicles are far less floaty and have a much greater sense of weight to them. The game's pace is much faster than the first. Boosts are more impactful, so overall you get a greater sense of speed. The handling right out the gate feels like a proper full-fledged upgrade on all fronts, and the controls in general are rock solid. You can now continuously hold your drift for as long as you want, releasing it when you're either able to or you found an opportune point to do so. Quickly letting go of the drift button, swapping directions, and holding drift again will allow you to change directions and still maintain your drift, which feels immeasurably satisfying to pull off. It can also allow for one to theoretically charge boost all throughout the entire race over and over again if they become MLG pro at maneuvering through the course, always drifting. The stunt system got a major overhaul, and I honestly think this is the best stunt system a kart racer has to offer. Rather than an unintuitively sluggish mid-air pose that is entirely determined by random chance animations, transform stunts are intuitive and extremely fun to pull off. Using the right control stick, you can flip your vehicle forwards, backwards, or barrel roll left and right. These moves are shared across the entire cast and are all the exact same speed, no random animation nonsense, just pure consistency. Thank you. The goal is to pull off as many stunts as you can before hitting the ground, which adds a great risk and reward factor as stunts are fast and easy to pull off. But if you fail a stunt, you slow down dramatically, an actual risk, unlike All-Stars Racing stunts. What's that? Are you tired of me ragging on All-Stars Racing too much? Too bad, I'm gonna keep doing it. The boost you receive by doing stunts all depends on how many you pull off before hitting the ground, though doing 3 completely different stunts nets you a higher boost than doing the same stunts in a row repeatedly. The best part of this whole thing, however, is that you can pull off stunts basically anywhere you want. As long as you're in the air and you think you could get away with it, you can perform stunts at any time and potentially get boost value off of every opportunity that you're airborne. This is especially effective with the boats like I mentioned earlier. The removal of boost speed cap combined with the airtime you get with the giant waves means you can gain a surprising amount of speed for a vehicle that's supposedly slower than the other two forms. The stunts aren't just good for gaining speed either, they're multi-purpose by design. You can use them for maneuverability in the air, a good chance to reposition in a more favorable spot when you land, and the ability to dodge incoming items thrown your way. And of course, yeah, we have to talk about risk boosting.
Risk boost!
In plane form, if you dodge an obstacle, which can be literally any part of the stage geometry, at the last possible second before you hit it, you'll get a risk boost. Essentially a slight boost in speed for that split-second dodge. Once again, this introduces another incredibly fun risk and reward system, though this one is obviously way harder to pull off consistently. But if you do manage to pull off risk boosting off the stage terrain over and over and over again, you can get an insane amount of speed and it is gratifying to pull off. This isn't even all you can pull off with stunts either. You can pull off some ridiculous stuff by stunting in a very specific angle at the corner of transform rings during plane form and go flying and leap over huge distances. I mean, just look at this nonsense, god dang. This is also honestly why I prefer Transformed over something like, say, Sonic Riders, because not only is Transformed easier to understand and get into and is therefore more inviting of a game right out of the gate, but it also offers just as much mechanical depth and complexity if you take the time to look into it. It's the best of both worlds. It makes Transform that much more fun to play in comparison, in addition to the insane track design and large amount of Sega fan service in general. It also helps that on top of the character roster being much more balanced than the previous game, you also get access to mods via leveling up your character. This adds an extra layer of customization so you can adjust a certain racer's playstyle to something you're more comfortable with. Whether it's more speed, better handling, better acceleration, a more balanced playstyle, etc. Next up are items that you pick up during race, which have almost all received a major overhaul for the best across the board. Not only are they far more impactful compared to the dinky Mario Kart copycat items in the first All-Stars game, they're also more interesting by design. The 2 projectile items, Firework and Ice, are super fast and far-reaching and thus require more precision to aim and hit opponents with them. They also have different properties to set them apart. The Firework can ricochet off walls but is a single-use item. Ice doesn't ricochet off walls but comes in packs of 3, and hitting all 3 on an opponent slows them down significantly. There's the Glove, acting as a replacement to the shield but can catch items and then be used to throw them back at opponents, or alternatively, it can be used to block a stage hazard should you happen to run into it, which is also pretty handy. There's the Hot Rod, giving you a massive speed boost and providing another risk and reward mechanic depending on when you can time the ending shockwave attack. Heck, even the items that seem more disruptive than others are pretty balanced. The Drone is one of the only instances of a homing item in the entire game, but you can actually avoid it with a well-timed boost at just the right moment. Swarm is the closest I can think of to this game getting a blue shell equivalent item, but you can still maneuver around it with skillful driving or by attacking it with items. Atop of this, there are also yellow item boxes scattered throughout the course known as Super Pickups. They could be an upgraded version of a regular item such as the Super Glove, or they could give you multiple amounts of the same item. These are usually placed in hard-to-reach areas or tight corners and shortcuts, encouraging skillful driving and course memorization to consistently pick up. The point I'm trying to get across is that these items are not only better designed and more impactful, but they're also just plain fun to use and further add to the chaotic, frantic nature and fast pace of Transformed. Unrelated, sort of, I guess, but I don't know where else to put this. There are also these coins you can collect on these tracks, but all they do is allow you to spend them on slot machines before a race starts in order to get some sort of random advantage. Not really super interesting, but it's there, I guess. If I did have to gripe about anything related to the items, it would be two things. One, the issue of these items not being a part of the different Sega universes and still feeling and looking like generic, wacky cartoon items is still a minor gripe I had from the first All-Stars racing game, and yeah, it's still not addressed here. I mean, come on, it's even easier to reimagine them in the first game. Swarm is just begging to become Buzz Bombers. I mean, heck, the Blowfish item was changed into a garbage Puyo from the Puyo Puyo series in the Japanese version of Transform, but why couldn't the rest of the items be changed to something like that? Stuff like that is fun and injects fanservice into an already fanservice-filled game. Another issue I have, and I realize I'm not exactly alone on this particular issue either, is the complete downgrade of the All-Star move. Wow, the first All-Stars game managed to do something better than Transform. Color me surprised, I guess. Better chalk that one up for All-Stars Racing then, it's certainly climbing up the ranks now. Instead of every character having a fun and unique All-Star move, now everything is a lot more streamlined and sterile. Your vehicle transforms into plane form regardless of what terrain you're on, and you can either lob homing projectiles or shoot shockwave attacks. Yeah, that's about it. No supersonic, no samba conga. Every racer feels practically identical in this regard. It's super lame in comparison to the creative and unique variety the first game had. While we're on the subject of things I don't particularly like about Transform, figure I could get this topic over and done with quickly since it's not especially very lengthy as you can imagine. Let's talk about the character roster. Now look, I get it. Everyone has the hots for Danica Patrick, I understand, but I also have to ask, was she, like, really deserving to be part of the roster? It just feels like product placement. I mean, it literally is. Both her, Team Fortress, and Wreck-It Ralph feel like such weird, nonsensical third-party inclusions that just kind of clash with the rest of the roster, and not in a good way as guest characters typically do. I will say, though, that the voice of Ralph in-game actually does a remarkably good job at imitating John C. Reilly, so props to him. On top of that, they've made some very unfortunate cuts to the base roster. Opa Opa, Bonanza Brothers, Zobio, and Zopiko are all gone. Even Billy Hatcher, for some bizarre reason, is cut too. He has a single track in this game, but Billy himself is nowhere to be seen. It's so odd. Apparently this is because they couldn't figure out a way to rework his vehicle into multiple transforming vehicle forms, which, I don't know, man. I thought that part was pretty straightforward for as straightforward as his car already was. This cut just feels unnecessary. In addition to this, the roster is also packed with clone characters. I mean, they make sense, don't get me wrong. Gum, Mimi, and Rial are obvious additions to model and include after their respective counterparts, but like, Pudding? I think we could have done without a few of them. Not all the new additions are bad though, and speaking of Riala, they finally made Knights a playable racer, which is pretty cool. Okay. Oh dear. Whew. Okay, so Knights, instead of riding in a car, just decided to become the car, and do the Knights characters just do this sort of thing in the games, and I'm just an uncultured peasant who doesn't know what I'm talking about because I haven't played the games yet? Hang on, let me just... Oh hey, they do this sort of thing, what do you know? In any case, this inevitably led to Rystar being the flag bearer. Look, some poor Sega sap is going to be the flag bearer in these crossover games no matter what. It's likely going to be Rystar who will take the bullet every single time. Or heck, actually get Omochao to be the flag bearer instead. That way they don't need to exclude anyone. What was I saying again? Alright. Besides Knights, there's also Gilius Thunderhead from Golden Axe, Vice from Skies of Arcadia, Joe Musashi from Shinobi, and of course, who could forget Aegis, the car from Daytona, USA that transforms into an afterburner fighter jet, who then also transforms into a Sega Dreamcast controller. Absolutely incredible. Man, you're telling me these things were actually water and magma resistant? Dreamcast developers really were ahead of their time. And I don't care what anyone says, Football Manager is an amazing roster pick. Just goes to show that Sega can pull a rep from any part of the library that they so desire and get away with it, and hey, I'm 100% on board with that decision. Now all they need is to bring Echo the Dolphin to the next one and we're all set. Alright, gonna create a bit of an off-script interjection here. This is future G7 reporting in. You know, just as I was recording and editing this video, I actually was recording some more footage for All-Stars Racing Transformed, you know, more B-roll footage to use in general gameplay and primarily specific examples of using items to go along with the audio that I've been talking about. But one detail that I just now caught, like I've never actually paid attention to this before, is with Ages, and in boat form, in his Dreamcast controller form, it turns out that if you hit corners, if you like run into stuff, if you spin out, Ages actually makes Dreamcast console noises. Like, you know, if you've ever owned a Dreamcast, when you hear it like reading a disc or doing anything really, it's like the loudest console noises known to man, and they actually managed to sneak that into his boat form. That is genuinely hilarious. That's how you know how much, you know, fan service and love was put into Transform. There's details that I'm still to this day figuring out or noticing for the first time. That's pretty amazing. I feel I should bring up comparisons of the single-player modes as well. The World Tour mode is the main single-player campaign offering and is light years better than the mission mode in the first All-Stars game. Okay, I mean, it is basically a glorified mission mode, but the entire experience is far more substantial. You earn stars based on the difficulty you choose when selecting the mission. The harder the difficulty you choose, the more stars you earn. You can then actually use these stars you've collected to unlock extra racetracks and characters, encouraging improving your skill and getting better at the game in order to earn more stars. There's also a lot more variety compared to previously. You have your standard Grand Prix and single races, but you also have the addition of elimination races, drift challenges, ring challenges, traffic challenges where you need to avoid and weave through cars in order to keep the timer going, rival races. You even face off against big freaking tanks, which actually feels like they finally took the boss fight idea from the previous All-Stars game and got it right. At some point you unlock Expert difficulty, the hardest difficulty setting, but this also means an extra star to unlock for every single mission, both upcoming and previously. This is also kind of a big complaint I have for World Tours. Essentially, if you want to get all the stars that the mode has to offer, you basically need to replay a ton of the missions all over again. I don't know, I feel like this could have been handled better, but I think Expert mode should have been there from the start, and let players evaluate how they want to start tackling these missions right off the bat. But hey, unlike last time, I have to say the harder difficulty settings are like actually genuinely hard and provide a satisfying challenge.
Event failed.
You'll be hearing from me again.
Was that a threat? And yes, I did end up getting every single star in World Tour mode, so I basically unlocked all courses and characters. For some reason, Eggman was the one you unlocked by collecting every single star. That seems kind of like a steep task to complete to unlock such an iconic part of the roster, but whatever, I don't really mind it, I guess. Time Attack mode also returns, and Lord have mercy, the Expert Ghosts are ruthless this time around. They're basically the dev times again, and man, you really need to master stuff like risk boosting if you want to get an edge over these times. It's pretty absurd. Not that I'm against this, of course. This is basically what I expect over actual dev times. Transformed even offers online races. This is technically something that the first All-Stars game also had, but for some reason I will never understand the PC version of All-Stars Racing removed this feature. It's only on the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. It's also apparently on the Wii version as well. Oh, wait. Granted, I only played a few matches, and while my connection was perfectly fine, and this is coming from someone who's basically stuck being forced to have McDonald's Wi-Fi attached to our house in the dead middle of Texas, but the people who do play this game online are clearly the ones who sink hundreds of hours into this game, so you'd better be prepared if you're still willing to play online on PC. Presentation-wise, man, this game looks stellar. The color palette is more vibrant, the level of detail far surpasses what the first game had, the character models are a lot better than the blank soulless husks of the first game, they can actually express emotions well. Okay, maybe a little too well. And seriously man, a lot of these stages are truly breathtaking. The Transform devs did such a remarkable job capturing the feel of the original games that apparently they made the producer of Skies of Arcadia almost cry when she saw Rogue's Landing track. That's how you know how much effort they put into the presentation. The soundtrack is also outstanding. The first game had nothing but straight ports of the original music, which, you know, was perfectly fine, to be fair, nothing wrong with that. And it also helped that you could choose which song was played on a specific course, but this game is chock full of fantastic remixes of all sorts of Sega tracks, the Burning Rangers theme being probably among one of my favorites. All of these remixes were possible thanks to well-known composer and giant self-absorbed temper tantrum-throwing man-child Richard Jacques. My personal thoughts on him as an individual aside, and believe me, I would like to go into detail on why he's a terrible person and why it's baffling that Sega still apparently keeps working with him, that's beside the point. The soundtrack as a whole is a great listen all around. Even the main theme got a remix, which is pretty cool. My personal favorites being the Burning Depths remix, but there's also plenty of Sega franchises that got great remixes. Carrier Zone has a pretty rad rendition of Afterburner as well, and hey, any inclusion of Toot Toot Sonic Warrior gets a winning grade in my book. It's not Sonic Boom, but you know, it's pretty good. I feel like there's still a lot more I could say to describe the genius design of Transform and how the team at Sumo absolutely knocked it out of the park in pretty much every way you can possibly think of. The mechanics are the best I've seen in a kart racer, the track design is super dynamic, creative, and overall fantastic. The difficulty is quite challenging but never overly frustrating. It's content-packed, it runs smooth as butter, and looks amazing. Honestly, it's hard to just nitpick and come up with issues I do have with the game. This is still the best kart racer I have ever played, no contest. And going back to revisit it only reinforced these thoughts. To nobody's surprise, as I stated prior, it blows the original game away in every single way imaginable. I mean, just man, I love this game a lot. I hope someday Sumo makes another All-Stars game on the same level as this game, or better yet, makes one that surpasses it. I suppose saying this out loud kind of spoils my thoughts on the next game in this supposed trilogy, so let's dive into that, shall we?